The courtroom was silent. All eyes were on the woman standing beside the witness, her hands calm, her face unreadable. The lawyer smirked, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Tell my client," he said mockingly, "to answer the question if she even understands it." A few chuckles rippled across the room, but the woman said nothing. She adjusted her headset, met his gaze, and replied, not in one language, but two. Fluent, precise, effortless. The smirk faded. The air shifted. And for the first time, the lawyer realized he'd underestimated the wrong person. She wasn't anyone's idea of power. No fancy suit, no loud voice. Just a quiet interpreter, the kind people glance over, without really seeing. Every day, she sat between worlds translating voices, building bridges no one noticed. Her work was invisible, her skill underestimated. But she carried something no one in that courtroom did: patience, sharpened by years of being ignored. She'd seen arrogance in every form. Lawyers who talked down to clients, judges who dismissed her corrections, people who thought fluency meant superiority. But she never snapped, because language had taught her something deeper: that silence, when chosen, is its own kind of power. That morning, the case was already tense. A corporate lawsuit, one side foreign, the other local. The lawyer, confident and loud, strutted into the room like he owned it. "Let's get this over with," he said, tossing his briefcase on the desk. He didn't even glance at her as she set up her equipment. "Make sure you translate accurately," he sneered. "We can't afford another miscommunication like last time." She gave a polite nod. Her eyes didn't flinch. But when she began interpreting, his patience quickly wore thin. "Excuse me," he interrupted. "You don't need to repeat everything. Just summarize. That's what translators do, right?" She looked at him quietly. "With respect," she said, "a translator conveys meaning, not opinion. Every word matters." The lawyer chuckled under his breath. "Sure, whatever you say." As the session went on, he found new ways to make her small, correcting her pronunciation, waving dismissively when she spoke, whispering jokes to his assistant. The courtroom saw it, but no one spoke, until a mistake happened. During cross-examination, he misused the term "a legal nuance" in the client's native language. It changed the entire meaning of the question. The witness froze, confused. The translator paused. "Excuse me," she said softly. "He didn't mean—" The lawyer cut her off sharply. "Don't correct me," he snapped. "Just translate." Her eyes darkened slightly, not with anger, but with clarity. He had just humiliated himself. He just didn't know it yet. Later that day, the judge called for clarification. The testimony didn't match the transcript. Someone had mistranslated key terms. The lawyer pointed straight at her. "She must have misinterpreted my words." Gasps filled the courtroom. She stood calmly, hands folded. "Your Honor," she said, "may I clarify the record?" The judge nodded. And that's when she began switching seamlessly between languages. One by one, she translated each sentence exactly as it was spoken, tracing every detail, every inflection. Then she turned to the lawyer. "In your question, you used the term culpable, which in this client's language translates closer to criminal intent. That was not the legal term required. The correct phrase was liable." The room went still. Even the judge leaned forward. She continued calmly, flawlessly explaining how his phrasing had nearly changed the meaning of the entire testimony. Finally, she said quietly, "Accuracy, sir, is not a matter of opinion. It's a matter of respect." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. The lawyer's face flushed red. The judge nodded slowly. "Translator, please proceed with the record. And, counsel, be mindful of your language." The lawyer sat down, humiliated. But what he didn't know was that this was just the beginning. Soft piano music fades in, solemn, reflective. The narrator's voice enters, calm but heavy with meaning. The courtroom was empty now. The echoes of judgment still lingered between the marble walls, not from the judge's gavel, but from the silence that followed her revelation. The lawyer stood alone near the door, his briefcase hanging from his hand like a fallen sword. He'd just learned that the woman he mocked, the translator he dismissed as Just a language tool spoke 10 languages, fluently, effortlessly, and she had corrected him in front of everyone. But humiliation has a way of twisting inside the heart before wisdom can enter. He didn't see a lesson. He saw an enemy. She was packing her things quietly, gracefully. Her expression was unreadable, like someone who'd seen arrogance before and learned to walk past it. He stepped closer. "You're quite impressive," he said, his voice sharp with something that pretended to be respect. She looked up, polite but distant. "Thank you," she said softly. Her tone wasn't prideful, it was peace. That kind of peace that unsettles those who thrive on control. He adjusted his tie. "I might have judged too quickly earlier. Maybe I was under pressure." She gave a slight nod, not forgiveness, not accusation, just acknowledgement. Then he added, "Actually, I have another case next week. It's complex international. I could use someone versatile. 10 languages, right?" She hesitated. It sounded like an olive branch, but in his tone there was still something sharp, the kind of politeness that hides a blade. "I'll think about it," she replied. And that was her first mistake, because he took it as a yes. The next week, she arrived at his office. It was different from the courtroom, quiet, expensive, almost suffocating. The smell of polished leather and legal ambition filled the air. He greeted her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Glad you came," he said, guiding her into a conference room where several thick files waited, each one labeled in a different language: Arabic, Mandarin, Russian, French, Swahili, Portuguese, a linguistic labyrinth. She opened the first file, scanning quickly notes, contracts, testimonies. It was legitimate work, but layered with traps. Half translations, half tests. Every paragraph was designed to provoke her, to see if she'd slip, to make her doubt herself. He watched her closely. Every pause, every breath. "So," he said casually, "someone who speaks 10 languages must have quite a story. Where'd you learn them all?" "Everywhere life took me," she said quietly. "Ah," he smirked. "So you're self-taught." She didn't respond, but in her silence, his words fell back on him like dust from a crumbling wall. Over the next few days, he grew bolder. He'd accidentally misplaced documents. He'd question her interpretations. He'd interrupt her mid-sentence, pretending to clarify, but only to undermine. One morning, he leaned against the doorway and said, "You know, sometimes being too confident in language can make you miss nuance. You're not a lawyer. Maybe you wouldn't understand legal tone." She paused her typing. Then she looked up and said quietly, "I don't need to be a lawyer to understand tone. I just need to listen." He blinked. For a moment, the air tightened between. She returned to her work, not out of submission, but mastery. And he hated it, because the more he tried to shake her, the calmer she became. That calm, that quiet power became his obsession. Days later, the meeting arrived. An international arbitration, one that could define his career. Dozens of delegates, 5 languages, 1 translator. Her. He had a plan, a subtle one. He'd include a clause, an ambiguous one, buried in the translation, something that would shift liability in his favor. If she missed it, if she caught it, he'd accuse her of overstepping. If she didn't, he'd discredit her. Either way, he'd win. As the meeting began, his smile was razor-thin. She took her seat beside him, calm, poised, headphones in, notes ready. Every word echoed through her, Mandarin to English, French to Arabic, each sentence like a symphony of logic and truth. Then it came, the clause, "the poison in his garden." She paused. "Read it again." Then again. Her brow furrowed slightly. He glanced sideways, pretending not to watch, but desperate to see her fall. She adjusted her glasses and spoke, softly but firmly. "Before proceeding, there seems to be a linguistic inconsistency in the liability clause between versions. In the Mandarin draft, responsibility lies with the client, not the firm. But in the English version, it's reversed." The room fell silent. He froze. The clause. She'd found it. Her tone was factual, not accusatory. But her calm delivery was lethal. One of the delegates looked toward him. "Is that true?" He opened his mouth, but the word stuck. Yes, he stammered finally. Translation error. Perhaps. She turned to him, her eyes kind but unflinching. Then it's good we clarified, she said. Miscommunication can ruin lives. That sentence, miscommunication can ruin lives, echoed like thunder through his pride. The meeting ended in applause, not for him, but for her. The firm's reputation saved by the very woman he tried to destroy. He walked out first, but the hallway felt colder this time, like the marble remembered. Later that night, he sat alone in his office. The city lights blurred through the window as thoughts raced through his mind. Every success he ever had suddenly felt hollow, because deep down he realized he hadn't been fighting her. He'd been fighting what she represented: humility, grace, the kind of strength that doesn't need a title to command respect. Still, his pride whispered, "It's not over." The next morning, his phone rang. It was the senior partner. "Good work yesterday," the voice said, "but we've had a request. The translator. She's been recommended for a permanent position with the firm. Clients loved her accuracy." His throat tightened. "She's joining us?" "Possibly. We'll discuss it at the next board meeting." When the call ended, he sat motionless. Every wall of his power felt smaller, now closer. He realized she wasn't going anywhere, and maybe neither was his guilt. That evening, he found her again, this time in the quiet hallway near the elevators. The same place where it all began. He spoke first. "You made me look like a fool." She didn't flinch. "I didn't make you anything. You chose your reflection." Her words landed like truth, quiet, but sharp enough to cut through every excuse. He stepped closer. "Do you think you're better than me?" "No," she said softly. "I think we could both be better than what pride makes us." He swallowed hard. That sentence didn't just humble him, it haunted him. He couldn't sleep that night. Memories replayed the arrogance, the humiliation, the games. He saw her face in every silence. So, the next morning, he did something unthinkable. He went to her office. She looked up, surprised. "I came to apologize," he said quietly. "For everything. The tests, the manipulation, all of it." She listened, not interrupting. When he finished, she said, "Do you mean it, or do you just want the guilt to stop?" He looked down. "I don't know." "Then maybe," she said gently, "you're not ready to apologize. Not until you understand why you did it." He nodded slowly, and for the first time, his silence wasn't pride, it was surrender. Weeks passed. Rumors spread in the firm. A major international client had requested a new lead, someone who could bridge cultures, negotiate across languages, and represent global empathy. The board made a decision. The translator, now linguistic consultant, would lead. The lawyer entered the boardroom that day, unaware. When he saw her standing at the head of the table, his breath caught. She began her presentation clear, concise, confident, her voice steady, her message powerful. Halfway through, she paused and looked at him, not to humiliate, but to remind. Then she said, "The biggest barrier in communication isn't language, it's ego." And just like that, the room applauded, but the camera of the story lingered on his face, because the applause wasn't for her victory, it was for his awakening. That night, as he walked his car, a strange stillness filled the air. He looked up and saw her standing by the firm's glass doors, silhouetted by light. For the first time, he smiled a real smile. But then his phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. He opened it. "You're not the only one who tested her." He frowned. Below it, an attachment. A document, legal files, from an international case. One of hers. The sender's note read, "Ask her who she really is." He froze. Sometimes, when the truth humbles us, we mistake it for the end of our story. But humility is only the beginning, because pride doesn't die easily. It hides, waiting for one more chance to speak. And when it does, it doesn't whisper. It tempts.